All right, so thanks again, everyone, for being here today. We are getting going on writing letters to legislators and newspaper editors. So here's, again, what we already went through some of this. So here's what we're touching on today, and I look forward to actually getting some letters written today after we touch on this content. So I'm going to pass it over to Shar, who's going to share more. She's going to kick us off and sharing tips around how do you actually write to your legislators. So yeah, take it away, Shar.
Thanks, Pam. So we'll start with why we want to write to our legislators. They need to hear from us, we're the constituents, and the cohort that they tend to have the least contact with is youth and students. So that's college kids and high schoolers. Your elected officials work for you. It's their job to care about what you care about. And so it's our job to tell them what they need to be working on in any specific session and what's important to us so that they know what's important to the community they're representing. That's the whole point of representatives. This can push them to vote on the things that we want them to support, which is how legislative sessions are supposed to work. Next slide. This is a district finder, this link here, which I don't know how to put it in the chat on Bailey's laptop, but you can put your address in there. It will tell you what district you're from and which legislators you want to be writing to. You will have 2 representatives and a senator, no matter what district you're from. And it'll be really easy from there to figure out whether they're co-sponsors on the acts that we're working on tonight, and also get their contact information in case you'd like to email them. Do we have that in the chat?
Yep.
Yes, we do. Excellent. We can contact them either through actual mail or through email. Email tends to be more reliable because if we write an email tonight and send it tonight, it will get to them tonight, which is awesome. However, both legislators and their aides get just a huge volume of emails. So that's a benefit of snail mail. We know that Representative Doglio, who I think is Bailey's rep, yeah?
Yes, she was, yeah.
No, she's not. She's Bailey's rep. She keeps postcards that she gets from students on her desk to remember what she's fighting for and why it's so important. They can seem more personal, especially if we're handwriting them. But mail to Olympia sometimes gets delayed and it can be messy. So it's possible that's less reliable unless we're able to hand deliver them. Washburn people, if you write a note by hand tonight, I'll collect them and send them as a bundle or something. Moving on. We want to personalize these notes as much as possible, regardless of what format you're choosing. We want to pull from your own experience. We're communicating why you're passionate. Why you're passionate is going to look different than why Pam is passionate. That's why we're holding this workshop. We're going to pull as much from stories and experiences as possible. On the next slide, I'm going to show like a quick template. You can pull as much or as little from that as you'd like. I'll also write an example. Your finished letter should look different than mine. We also want to be concise. I think shooting for maybe 2 or 3 brief paragraphs is good, maybe half a page. If your letter is 18 pages front and back, it's actually going to be less impactful just because it's probably not going to get read. And you're also going to want to always end with a clear ask. Generally, with what we're doing tonight, you're going to ask for their strong support in passing the RAP Act. In 2024, that is the part that's going to actually stick in their head. Everything else you're writing is to support that. And I have a sample on the next slide. This is my little template. Hopefully you can read it. All right. Just to be extra double clear, anything in brackets does not go in your final letter. And I'll read it out as an example. I'm from the 36th district, so my representative is Representative Reed. So I wrote, hello, Representative Reed. My name is Charlotte, and I'm a constituent of the 36th district and a student at the University of Washington. I am writing to urge you to support the RAP Act. This bill would increase recycling access across the state of Washington, as well as shifting the cost burden of recycling onto producers, not everyday people and consumers like myself. This legislation has been proven successful around the world, including in states such as California and Oregon. I'm from King County, where we're privileged that recycling is both accessible and expected, but 42% of Washington residents still can't recycle curbside. This is an issue that I and many other young people are passionate about. Please continue to do everything in your power to move the RAP Act forward and give us all the right to recycle. Thank you for all the work you've already done. Sincerely, Charlotte Jensen. Your personal story can and should look different than any personal story or stats that I have. You're also welcome to throw in things you learned last week. That's great. That's why we learn them. Anything else? Bailey, nothing? All good? Excellent.
Awesome. Before we move on to writing letters to the editor and tips for that, do folks have any questions for Shar or anyone else on the call? Yeah, Laura.
Just a quick thing that we were told by a fabulous young lobbyist who was all of 22 when I met her 11 years ago. She's a few years older now, but she told us that if at all possible, if it can be short, thank them for something that you like that they did. So you can always look up on their personal, on their webpage about bills that they've passed or things that they're passionate about. And every time a student has mentioned that, the elected official went, oh, you did your homework, or, oh, I didn't realize you knew that. Oh, it kind of surprises them. So it also puts you in a positive way of, I'm writing to thank you for two reasons. One, I appreciate that you either sponsored, supported, voted for, because all they have to do is even just vote yes for something, whatever bill. And then you can get on with the rest of the stuff that Shar shared, or you can throw that in somewhere else. Make it short and sweet, but if you can thank them for something, that really makes a difference too.
That's a great tip, Laura. Thank you. Yeah, Anna.
I just wanted to ask, I did a quick search using that district finder, and I found that I have a representative, I have 2 representatives and a senator with the state. And I am just curious to know, regarding this RAP Act, which is this pollution reduction bill that's going to be pushed in the legislative session, is it important to write to all of them? Is it more important to write to the representatives rather than the senators? Is there any rhyme or reason as to who you would focus on, or do you just go to all of them?
That is such a good question, Anna. So the RAP Act is going to be starting on the House side, and this year there isn't going to be a similar bill on the Senate side. And so I think if folks are writing one letter tonight, then I would say choose one of your representatives. And when you click on their names, you can see what committees they're on. If one of them's on the Environment Committee or the House Appropriations, they might see this bill in their committee. So I would maybe focus on them. Otherwise, either one or both of your representatives is great. But ultimately, we also hope that this bill is going to make it over to the Senate side. So if you have bandwidth to write all 3, it can be a similar letter, just, with the additional tailored to, that specific legislator and something that they did specifically that you want to thank them for. I would say that ultimately writing all 3 is the best. And yeah, so that's a really good question, Anna. Yeah, Kavya.
So we used the template you showed in the slideshow before to send the mail, right?
Yeah, so that is a template letter for writing a letter to your legislator. And after we wrap up our presentation, I also have a toolkit that this is in a Google Doc, and I can share with this group as well that has an additional template.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great. All right. Such good questions. So now I will jump into how to write a letter to the editor. So first off, what is a letter to the editor? The letters to the editor section is one of the most read sections of the newspaper by the public at large, and especially by decision makers who are trying to get a sense of public opinion. Published letters allows us to educate a much broader part of the population than we might normally have access to about this issue. and also influence decision makers. So letters from local citizens, have an even larger impact, even than like, I am an advocate and I work full time on this issue. So, of course I might have a certain perspective on this. And so, having local citizens speak up is very impactful. One just quick anecdote from my own experience of writing letters to the editor. When I graduated from college, the first issue campaign I ever worked on was targeting McDonald's and asking them to stop selling meat raised with medically important antibiotics. Contributes to antibiotic resistance when antibiotics are used in a subtherapeutic way in raising food. So that was something that we were trying to do. And we had a number of tactics as part of this campaign. One was, utilizing Twitter and just social media and other ways to get this major company's attention. But I also was submitting letters to the editor all the time, and I actually got a letter published in the New York Times. And that tactic in combination with some of the other things, we actually won. I had a bunch of other folks working with me as well, because we get big things done together. But within just a couple months, this major fast food company made this commitment to to not use meat raised with medically important antibiotics. And so letters, again, for me as an organizer, I'm like, hey, this is part of the tactics that made this happen. And so just a word of encouragement that like this can have a big impact. So let's get into it. How do we actually write a great letter to the editor? How do we actually write a letter that can get published in our papers? So again, be concise. A letter should be under 200 words and is more likely to be printed if even shorter. A lot of newspapers actually have word count limits, some of them as short as 150 words, and some as long as like 250 words. I think the Spokesman Review in Spokane is up to 250 words. Next, you want to focus on one clear point. Pick one fact, pick one aspect of the story for the letter. In this amount of space, that's really all you have room for. 3, you want to make it personal. Again, remember that unique to all of us is our own experience and our own point of view. So don't be afraid to tap into that. And that is what's going to make your letter come alive. The best letters are compelling and unique rather than just purely reasserting the facts. So, I'll share our toolkit and the fact sheets with, stats on the policy and the impact of the bill. So you can definitely draw from that, and that can reinforce your point. But utilizing your own personal experience is going to be most impactful. Yeah, and then we can share the template slide again before we break into workshops so that folks can take a picture of it. And then I can also share the slides. So next, you want to have a good hook. So this is the, kind of the topic, like the first sentence of the letter to the editor. So a couple tips for this is referencing or responding to a recent article or letter. Newspapers are likely to print letters that show relevance and timeliness to issues that the paper is already covering. So you can look in your local paper for a story that, connects to the issue. I think, given the time we're at now, time of year, Black Friday is coming up, and that is a big time where people are purchasing a lot. There's a lot of packaging that's used at this time of year around the holidays. And I can find this stat actually maybe when we jump into our workshops, but there's just like percentage-wise more trash produced at this time of year than other times of the year. And so that could be, that could be a hook that you could use in your story, or it could be an experience that you had recently related to the issue, or just the fact that legislative session is coming up. There are a lot of different things. So yeah, again, you can use a timely event, you can tap into a personal experience. Feel free to use our workshop to bounce ideas off of the group. And yeah, so include a call to action. Again, you want to be clear in your ask. So call on either community members, call on legislators to take action, support the RAP Act in a strong way in 2024. Then your message is really clear. And as Shar said, everything else you write helps support that. Then nail the details. So make sure to look at wherever you're submitting this letter to the editor, what needs to be included. Oftentimes it's your name and your address, so they know like, oh yeah, you're submitting to the Tacoma News Tribune and you live in the area. That stuff doesn't get published, but it's like one to ensure that you're like a real person, and also submitting to your local paper is often yields some of the best results in getting things actually published. The editor will often call or respond to your email submission before they run it. And another detail is just the word count. If there are limits, definitely adhere to them, because they won't publish it likely if you're over the word count limit. So some tips. I worked once with a reporter and former newspaper editor, so these are some of their tips. So one, just do it. Keep in mind that publications or websites, if they have a published letter section, they are actively looking for content. They're looking for you. It's their, in the business, they say you have to feed the beast. And so they are always looking for content and they want submissions. And so make sure, just do it and submit it. In terms of writing advice, basic writing advice holds. So using active voice. So again, the subject of the sentence is performing an action. I want ice cream instead of ice cream is wanted by me. It sounds weird. Make sure to do spelling and grammar check. Sloppiness hurts your credibility. And I always get someone else to read through it before I submit it. And we can be a resource for you in doing that. Again, last tip, write with clarity, short sentences, clear sentences, short paragraphs. Yeah. Alrighty, so I will share an example. Feel free to take screenshots here. So this is a letter that I actually wrote last year. I think I wrote this in January. It was right after the holidays. And so it referenced an article or a letter an article that got published. And so I then responded to it. It was in the Columbian, so it wasn't a local paper for me. So you definitely can reply to any paper throughout the state. And I think even though I, don't live down in Vancouver, because I responded to a letter that was helpful. So this, I focused on one element in this. Companies should take responsibility for what happens to the waste their products and packaging create. I used simple sentences and had a clear call to action. If you see at the end, that's why the Washington legislature should prioritize passing the Washington Recycling and Packaging Act. Here's what it'll do. My last sentence ties back to my hook at the beginning, which talked about, the holidays. And I said, for me, this would be the best gift of all. Cute tie back to the lead. So again, the structure is there's an opening. I talk about the problem and then talk about the solution and the call to action. So that's the basic formula. And I encourage you to utilize that outline if that's helpful in drafting a letter to the editor. All right, I guess I had one more example. I won't speak as into this, but again, feel free to take a screenshot of this. This was published super recently, last week or no, about a month ago, I guess, was the article that ran, and then Shenandoah is a volunteer who lives in Spokane, and this got published a couple weeks ago. So she was responding to an article about trash pollution on the Spokane River, and that was her tie-in to the litter and the plastic issue and the solution that we're advocating for. And she, again, you can look at the end, she has a clear call to action. This call to action is focused on calling on her fellow constituents. It's saying contact your state legislators and tell them you support extended producer responsibility, and you hope they will too. So that's a great example of, you know, how your call to action can be targeting different folks. So let's see. Anna, I saw your hand. Is that a lingering hand raise, or do you have a question?
It is a lingering hand raise,
Okay,
sorry.
no worries, no worries. I wanted to address your question if you had one. So where to submit? So here, again, I recommend taking a quick screenshot here, or we can share this in a follow-up email as well. But here are some of the top papers throughout the state. And you can also, some of our coalition partners put together some really helpful documents, publications by county, and then a publication list. And I'm putting these links in the chat. I think, yeah, so that's all I'll say about that. And yeah, note that all the variances of word counts, it's all over the map. And sometimes you fill out a form on their website, and sometimes you just email it right to letters@heraldnet.com. So the process can be different depending on what paper. All right, any questions? Okay,